Have you ever closed your eyes for a brief nap, only to wake up feeling like mere moments have passed, yet the world outside has completely changed? Now, imagine that nap didn't last for an hour, or even a night, but for 3 centuries. Imagine waking up to find that the empire you feared has crumbled, the currency in your pocket is an ancient relic, and the very language of the streets has evolved. This sounds like the plot of a modern science fiction blockbuster or a complex theory on time dilation from a physics classroom, doesn't it? But what if I told you that over 1,400 years ago, long before Albert Einstein drafted the theory of relativity, and centuries before humanity understood the concept of black holes or the bending of space-time, a book was revealed in the deserts of Arabia that documented this exact phenomenon? We are not talking about a fairy tale. We are talking about a historical event that challenges the boundaries of biology, physics, and history, a mystery that connects the persecution of early believers in the Roman Empire to the deepest secrets of the universe. Welcome back to Islamic Light Stories TV. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating narratives in the Quran, the story of Ashab Al-Kahf, or the people of the cave. But we aren't just looking at the history, we are going to explore the mind-bending possibility that these pious young men were actually the first recorded time travelers in human history. Did they experience a cosmic anomaly? Did the cave act as a gravitational shield, similar to an event horizon? How does modern science explain a sleep that lasts 309 years without the body aging or decaying? If you think you know this story, think again, because the details we're about to uncover might just change the way you look at time, faith, and the reality of the unseen. To understand the magnitude of this miracle, we must transport ourselves back to a time of terrifying oppression. The Roman Empire, a civilization celebrated for its architecture and military might, was also a place of spiritual darkness. While the empire boasted of civilization, it was wrought with idolatry and tyranny. In this era, declaring that there was only one God was not just a difference of opinion, it was a death sentence. The emperor of the time demanded total submission, not just to his rule, but to the idols he worshipped. The streets were often stained with the blood of those who refused to bow, and the torture mechanisms of the Romans were designed to break the spirit before breaking the body. In the midst of this darkness, a small group of young men who came from the upper echelons of society found their hearts illuminated with the light of monotheism. These were not outcasts or rebels without a cause. They were the sons of the elite, young men who wore the fine silks of nobility and walked the halls of power. Yet they felt a sickening hollowness in the rituals of their people. When the emperor announced a grand festival dedicated to sacrificing to idols, these young men, unknown to one another at first, slipped away from the cheering crowds. They found themselves gathering under a tree, drawn together by a shared, silent rejection of the falsehood around them. As they began to speak, they realized they shared the same secret, a belief in the oneness of Allah. However, secrets in a totalitarian regime rarely stay secret for long. Whispers of their defiance reached the emperor's palace. These young men were summoned to stand before the most powerful man in the known world. It was a moment where most would crumble, begging for mercy. But here, a miracle of the heart occurred. Allah cast a divine fortitude into their chests. Instead of trembling, they stood tall and declared, "Our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. We will never call upon any God besides Him." This declaration was a shockwave that rattled the court. The emperor, perhaps hoping to avoid creating martyrs out of noble sons, or perhaps out of sheer arrogance believing they would come to their senses, gave them a few days to recant their faith or face a gruesome execution. Seizing this temporary reprieve, the youth made a decision that would echo through eternity. They chose to flee. They traded their lives of luxury for the harshness of the wilderness, prioritizing their faith over their fortunes. As they escaped the city, a dog followed them. Even the animals can sense the aura of the righteous. They eventually found refuge in a cave on a mountain, a place they hoped would hide them for a night or two until they could formulate a plan. Exhausted, terrified, and praying for mercy, they lay down on the cold ground. They asked Allah to facilitate their affair and grant them mercy. And then, the laws of physics as we know them were suspended. They didn't just fall asleep, they entered a state of suspended animation ordained by the creator of time itself. This is where the narrative shifts from a historical thriller to a profound scientific mystery. The Quran states that they remained in that cave for 300 years and 9. To the outside world, empires rose and fell, languages changed, and the entire religious landscape of the region shifted from paganism to Christianity. But inside the cave, the clock had essentially stopped. When they eventually opened their eyes, they felt as though they had only napped for a day or part of a day. This radical difference in perception of time brings us to the forefront of modern physics. Let's look at this through the lens of Einstein's theory of relativity. Science tells us that time is not a constant. It is relative to speed and gravity. If you were to travel in a spaceship moving near the speed of light, time for you would slow down significantly compared to someone remaining on Earth. A few hours for you could be decades for the people you left behind. Similarly, near a supermassive black hole, the immense gravity warps space-time so severely that time almost stands still. The Quran describes their state in a very specific way. It mentions that they were in a fujwa, a spacious opening or hollow within the cave, and that the sun's rays would bend away from them, lending sunlight to the right as it rose and to the left as it set, without touching them directly. Could this fujwa have been a localized distortion of space-time? Some researchers and Islamic scholars have pondered if the cave acted as a time capsule, a protected zone where the flow of time was altered by divine command. The Quran says, "You would have thought them awake as they lay asleep." This suggests their eyes might have been open, or their appearance remained so fresh and lifelike that a casual observer would think they were just resting. Furthermore, the Quran details a biological miracle. We turned them to the right and to the left. Modern medicine tells us that if a comatose body lies in one position for too long, the blood pools, causing flesh to decay and sores to form. By turning them, Allah preserved their physical bodies intact for 3 centuries. The preservation extended even to their dog, who lay at the entrance with its paws outstretched. The Quran uses language that invokes terror for anyone who might stumble upon this scene. If you had looked at them, you would have turned back from them in flight and would have been filled with terror of them. Why terror? Perhaps it wasn't just the sight of men sleeping, but the aura of the cave itself. If the cave was indeed a warped zone of time or distinct atmospheric pressure, the very environment would feel unnatural, repelling any intruder. It was a divine force field protecting these sleepers from the outside world. When the sleepers finally awoke, their biological clocks had not registered the passing of centuries. They felt the gnawing of hunger, a very human, immediate need. They sent one of their own to the city to buy food, warning him to be subtle and cautious, still believing the tyrant emperor was hunting them. Imagine the scene, a man dressed in clothes from 300 years ago, speaking an archaic dialect, walking into a city that had completely transformed. He pulls out a coin to pay for bread, a coin bearing the face of a despot who had been dust for centuries. The baker looks at the coin, then at the man, assuming he has found a buried treasure. The confusion that ensued is one of history's most profound moments of realization. The young man was dragged not to a torture chamber, but to the feet of a righteous ruler, into a society that now honored the very faith he thought was outlawed. The revelation that 309 years had passed was not just a shock to the sleepers, it was a divine sign for the people of that era. At that time, society was debating the reality of the afterlife. Could God really resurrect the dead? Is the body just a shell that rots, never to return? The awakening of the people of the cave served as undeniable empirical proof. Here were men who had essentially died to the world, preserved and brought back to life. It demonstrated that time and biological decay are merely creations of Allah, subject to His command. If He can pause the decay of a body for 300 years, bringing the dead back to life on the Day of Judgment is effortless for him. But why was this specific story revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? The context of this revelation is just as fascinating as the story itself. The pagan leaders of Mecca were desperate to discredit the Prophet. They sent emissaries to the Jewish rabbis in Medina, asking for a way to trap him. The rabbis, possessing the ancient scriptures, told the Meccans to ask Muhammad 3 specific questions. Ask him about the young men who disappeared in the ancient past. Ask him about the man who traveled to the east and the west, Zulkarnain, and ask him about the nature of the soul,
Many years ago,
Ruh.
a group of
They
young
said,
men
if
sought
he
refuge
answers
in a
these,
cave,
he is a prophet.
fleeing
If not,
persecution.
he is a fraud. When the questions were posed, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I will tell you tomorrow, but he forgot to say, Insha'Allah, if Allah wills. As a lesson to him and the community, the divine revelation
See how the
paused.
star aligns with
Days
the meridian
turned into
here.
weeks. The
Yes,
Meccans
the
began to
calculations
mock
hold
him,
true for this
claiming
hour.
his God had abandoned him. The Prophet felt the crushing weight of sadness and anxiety. Finally, the angel Gabriel descended with Surah Al-Kahf. It answered the questions in detail, correcting the myths that had crept into the story over centuries and confirming his prophethood. But it did more than just answer. It provided a spiritual blueprint for protecting one's faith in times of trial. The Quranic account corrects the disputes regarding the number of sleepers. People debated, were they 3, 5, or 7? The Quran dismisses this bickering over details as guessing at the unseen, stating, My Lord knows best their number. The lesson here is profound. Do not get lost in trivial details at the expense of the core message. The miracle wasn't the number of men. The miracle was the power of faith and the sovereignty of God over time. Let's return to the concept of time. The verse says, and they remained in their cave for 300 years and added 9. Scholars have noted a miraculous mathematical precision here. The difference between the solar calendar based on the sun and the lunar calendar based on the moon creates a lag. 300 solar years is almost exactly 309 lunar years. The Quran, revealed to an unlettered prophet in the desert, acknowledged this astronomical calculation with perfect accuracy, bridging the gap between how different cultures measure time. Furthermore, modern theoretical physics suggests that time is a dimension similar to length, width, and height. If you can move through space, theoretically, one can move through time. However, we are trapped in the forward flow of time. But for the creator of the dimension of time, stepping in and out or pressing pause is a simple matter of will. The condition of the sleepers can be seen as a state where their biological entropy, the disorder and decay of cells, was halted. It aligns with the idea of the singularity in a black hole, a point where the laws of physics as we know them break down and time loses its meaning. While we cannot say for certain the cave was a black hole, the parallel suggests that the Quran describes a phenomenon where earthly laws were suspended by a higher power. This story also resonates with the mystical or Sufi understanding of the eternal now. In this spiritual view, past, present, and future are all accessible to Allah simultaneously. The sleepers were placed in a state that bypassed the linear suffering of time. This is a comfort to believers. It tells us that no matter how long the night of oppression lasts, Allah has the power to shorten the wait or preserve the righteous through it. It teaches us that escaping from a corrupt society to preserve one's faith is a noble act, and that Allah's aid can come in ways that defy logic and science. When the sleepers eventually died their natural death, the people of the city disputed over them, eventually building a place of worship over their site to honor their memory. But the true monument they left behind was not a building, it was the story itself, a story that traveled through centuries to reach us today via the Quran. So what does this mean for us, living in the 21st century in the United States or anywhere else? We live in a world where materialism is the dominant religion, where we are often pressured to compromise our values for social acceptance or financial gain.
The story of Ashab Al-Kahf is a reminder that standing firm in your convictions, even if you are just a small group of young people against a mighty empire, attracts the divine help. It reminds us that Allah is the controller of time and circumstances. You might feel like you are losing time, losing opportunities, or losing out on life by sticking to your faith, but Allah can bless your time, expand it, or preserve you for something greater that you cannot yet see. The mystery of the cave challenges us to look beyond the material world. It invites us to consider that our understanding of physics, biology, and time is incredibly limited. We are like the people outside the cave, guessing at the unseen, while the reality of Allah's power is far greater than our equations can capture. Whether it was a manipulation of relativity, a biological stasis, or a miracle beyond scientific explanation, the message remains the clear. Faith is the ultimate sanctuary. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time and faith. If this story sparked your imagination and strengthened your heart, please share this video with others who might need this reminder. Be sure to subscribe to Islamic Light Stories TV for more content that explores the depths of Islamic history, spirituality, and the miracles that surround us. Let us know in the comments, do you think modern science will one day fully explain the mechanics of this miracle, or will it remain a divine mystery forever? Until next time, may you find your own cave of peace in a chaotic world. Peace be upon you.